Hello everyone and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Thursday, August 4th, and I'm your host, Natan Solomon. Today we bring you some great interviews with some amazing people from around the tech industry, so stay tuned. As always, I'll start with our Techstrong news recap, filling you in on all the newest tech headlines. Next, Alan talks with the CEO of Hack the Box, Haris Pilarinos. In this interview, Alan and Haris talk about the Hack in the Box methods and the general state of security. Then, Alan sat down with Dominic Anharar, who is the co-founder and CEO of Storyblock. Storyblock is a headless CMS that allows developers and marketers to store and tell their stories. Recently, Storyblock announced a $47 million round of funding. To learn what they plan on doing with it, be sure to tune in. We then bring you to KubeCon Cloud Native Con, where Alan met with Danielle Cook and Kendall Miller of Fairwinds to discuss their commitment to the DevOps community and how Fairwinds can help DevOps teams deliver quality software faster. Then, at RSA, Alan talks with Grant Miller, the CEO of Replicated, about how Replicated is changing the way software is packaged and delivered by enabling software vendors to deliver software more securely. Also at RSA, Charlene met with Nikhil Gupta, the CEO and co-founder of ArmorCode. In this discussion, Charlene and Nikhil talk about ArmorCode's AppSecOps platform, which provides a complete solution for application security posture management, universal vulnerability management, and DevSecOps automation. After, Charlene, Cody J. Brown tells us about some upcoming webinars. Then, back at KubeCon Cloud Native Con, Mitch met with Victor Gamov, principal developer advocate at Kong, about Kuma, an open source service mesh that supports every environment, including Kubernetes. Finally, we wrap up with a two-pack of View with Vizard. First, Mike talked with Adam Frank, vice president of Armory, about why continuous delivery will evolve into a cloud service. Then, Mike interviewed Keith Nelson, technical evangelist at Cloudsphere, about why HR needs to become more involved in cybersecurity. That's what we have coming up for you here on Techstrong TV. Let's get the show started. Enjoy.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for August 4th. First in news, hackers stole nearly $200 million in cryptocurrency from Nomad, a tool used for swapping tokens between blockchains. Currently, it's unclear exactly how the attack was orchestrated or if Nomad will compensate users who lost tokens. Many blockchain security experts have coined the attack a free-for-all, as anybody with knowledge of the exploit could use it to withdraw money. Nomad is known as a blockchain bridge, which allows users to exchange tokens and information. This is one of many instances where these bridges have been exploited, as they've become a prime target for hackers. Next, Amazon's emissions increased 18% last year due to a pandemic-driven surge in e-commerce. In its annual sustainability report, Amazon emitted 71.54 million metric tons of carbon dioxide in 2021, an 18% increase from 2020 and almost a 40% increase from 2019. Throughout 2020 and 2021, e-commerce saw unprecedented boosts, forcing Amazon to add more delivery vans, planes, and trucks. Such additions have definitely contributed to the increase in emissions. Despite this, in 2019, Amazon committed to a climate pledge, committing to become carbon neutral by 2040. Although the increase in carbon emissions may be temporary, it's surely a step in the wrong direction. In other news, Volkswagen has selected Innoviz to supply its LiDAR technology, as Volkswagen continues to develop self-driving cars. Since the announcement, Innoviz's stock has surged more than 19%. This is Innoviz's third design partnership with an automaker, continuously improving its stock, with Wall Street projecting its 2023 sales at $33 million. Even further to its benefit, Innoviz is a Tier 1 supplier of VW, meaning it can sell directly to the automaker opposed to sending parts to other suppliers. LiDAR is laser-based radar technology that is integral in enabling self-driving cars, and it is the primary reason Innoviz is soaring past its competitors. Next, Uber saw some good news as it generated $382 million in cash during the April-June period. This marks Uber's fourth consecutive quarter where it's been profitable. In generating $384 million, Uber crushed its projection of $277 million. This good news comes amidst a tremendous second quarter loss of $2.6 billion, as many companies have suffered over the past few months as well. Much of Uber's recent losses come due to declines in its stake of Aurora, which is a self-driving car company, as well as its shaky investment in a Singapore transportation service called Grab. The CEO of Uber spoke on the current financial conditions of the company, saying that he is confident the company will build upon its momentum and possibly surpass its previously set goal of $1 billion in free cash flow annually. We'll have to see how the company rebounds in the second half of the year, but Uber is clearly optimistic. Also in news, Alibaba was recently added to the SEC's list of Chinese companies being delisted for not meeting auditing requirements. This resulted in a drop in shares listed in both New York and Hong Kong. The SEC requires foreign public companies to issue an audit report where the firm has a branch, and Alibaba's audits for the fiscal year could not be fully reviewed. Alibaba has said it will work with regulators to stay listed in both stock exchanges. On DevOps.com, we have an article breaking down the 7 layers of the Open Systems Interconnection, or OSI model. The OSI model is a conceptual model to help visualize a computerized network. There are 7 layers of the model, moving from the basic electrical connections up to more user-facing categories. Since it is common for engineers to refer to these different layers, it is important to understand each layer. Learn more about each level of the OSI model on DevOps.com. On Container Journal, we have an article discussing Mirantis' recent release of its Cloud-Native Application Integrated Development Environment, IDE, that includes a local instance of Kubernetes called the Lens Pro Edition. Over 650,000 developers already use the Lens IDE, and Mirantis estimates that up to 3 million developers are building cloud-native applications on Kubernetes clusters. Demand for cloud-native applications has always exceeded the pool of developers with Kubernetes expertise, and with dependencies of microservices increasing, the environment becomes harder to maintain at scale. With Lens Pro, it will be easier for developers to address this issue. Finally, on Security Boulevard, we have an article discussing the risks that identity management poses towards adopting multi-clouds. While more and more companies are moving applications to the cloud, they are having to deal with challenges such as identity silos, passwordless MFA, and managing compliance. When these challenges are not correctly managed, the level of cybersecurity risk increases. One way to manage these challenges is through identity orchestration solutions. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to Techstrong TV. Thanks for joining us here for another interview. I'm really happy to have on as our interview guest in this segment, all the way from Athens, Greece, beautiful city, beautiful country, Haris Pilarinos. Haris is the founder, CEO of Hack the Box. Did I get that right, Haris?
Yeah, that was perfect.
Good. All right. So, Haris, let's start off. You know, our audience is pretty technical, and there's a big cybersecurity audience. But let's assume not everyone knows Hack the Box. So why don't we start off, if you don't mind, give us a little background on the company and maybe your own background.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll start with my own background. So, as a kid, I loved breaking things apart, figuring out how they work. So I became a hobbyist hacker on my very early, let's say, ages. When I grew up to be employed, there was no cybersecurity profession. So I spent most of my career in software engineering, systems engineering, network. So basically the entire IT stack. And towards the later stages of my career, when cybersecurity was becoming a hot topic, primarily with GDPR in Europe back then, I found it a great opportunity to pivot back to what I loved as a kid, which I did. I did trainings, I did certifications. I was also teaching at some point a certification called Certified Ethical Hacker, which is from EC Council. And I wasn't very satisfied with the way training was delivered in ethical hackers. So I decided to, deliver it the way it would make more sense for me. Thus, Hack the Box was created, where essentially what I've seen is that cybersecurity is more about, and ethical hacking is more about the mindset rather than, reading about all the tools, remembering all the commands. I mean, you have Google. Why remember a command when you have Google? What you need is the mindset, the will, and the certainty that you will find a weak spot in this system and be able to compromise it. So in a nutshell, Hack the Box started with the core product, which is adversarial test labs. And what we tell the user is, here is an IP address. That's it. No guidance, no hand-holding, go figure it out. And that forces the user, to fight or flight. We only give the promise that this thing can be hacked. I guarantee that I've let a purposely built hole on that system. And that gives them the confidence they need on the early stages. Because when you are looking at that at your first time, you know that someone designed that thing to keep you out. So your confidence is right to the bottom. You build that confidence, and as you progress in Hack the Box, you realize that practically everything is hackable. It's just a matter of time and persistence to make it happen.
Yes. So let me comment a little bit. So first of all, Harry, it's like you know, I've been in security 25 years, 25 plus years. And when I first got in, there was no cybersecurity. First of all, we didn't call it cybersecurity. We called it security or InfoSec. And there was no cybersecurity classes in college or majors or stuff like this. Most of the people I knew in security were in security because they like to break things. They like to see if they could break it and then fix it better so it wouldn't be broken again, right? That was the usual fact pattern. And they weren't full-time security people. Most of the ones I knew were in network because I was more on the network security side of things. So most of the people I knew in security were former network engineers. They were very good at routing tables and, and as firewalls I came on when like Checkpoint, the firewalls were first coming on. And, but today, of course, it's a very different world. You've got kids going to school. It's funny, we have all these open jobs in security that are open because we can't find qualified people. And then we have all of these people who've graduated schools, like university, with cybersecurity classes, but they don't have any practical experience that qualifies them to do the job. And so you ask yourself, is the training, is the education we're delivering in the schools the right thing to help these people and to help the industry? That's another question. But in listening to what you're saying, so Hack the Box is really your take on how to teach people to be security people, how to hack, how to find vulnerabilities, right? Because if you have the attitude of, we used to call it the hacker's eye view, right? If you have that sort of viewpoint that a hacker would have, you're better able to defend it. What a great concept. Congratulations on that. Before we get into trends and stuff that are out there right now, so when people take your course, is there some sort of certification? Do they graduate? Is it continuing? Tell us a little bit.
It's a lifelong learning process because cybersecurity is progressing very fast. So taking a training, getting certified is one thing, but you have to, stay sharp with all the latest and greatest. I mean, trends change. 10 years ago, you wouldn't hear about Docker escapes, for example. Now it's all about them. Now, everything is Dockerized now. So the trends change. You have to keep up. You have to stay sharp. And it's better to do small iterations of new knowledge rather than bulky courses that last for an intensive 1 week, let's say, per year. At least that's our view, of course.
So is that the offering then from Hack the Box? Is you sign up and you do almost what's called continuous education or continuous... Exactly.
And this education leads to certifications, but after being certified, again, you have things to do to stay sharp and stay, let's say, battle ready in that profession.
I get it. And for the kinds of people who are taking your exam, who are taking your offering, not just the exam or certification, but who are getting trained, are they pen testers, AppSec folks, network security, or all over, all of the above?
The majority is pen testers or people wanting to become pen testers. And then we cover also the IT space, network engineering, etc. We don't really focus on the software engineering side yet. But everything else, security, is something that you can do in Hack the Box.
Sure. Well, I will tell you, with the shift left of security, it's a lot cheaper to test it on pre-deployed software, or to pen test sort of pre-deployed software than after it's deployed, right? So I think it's only a matter of time until you'll start getting software developers here who are security.
Exactly. And one of the things that I strongly believe is that knowing how the attacker thinks, by becoming the hacker yourself, when you code, you will have many aha moments. So that's another way someone could have got in. When you are building a system as a system administrator, did you close anything that shouldn't be open? I mean, all this hardening can be done, can be streamlined in the process of delivering the product itself. Instead of delivering, having the pen test findings, then fight a bit with the pen tester, because the developers commonly fight with the pen testers. No, my code is right, you are wrong, vice versa. So thinking like the attacker, no matter which position you cover, in the IT organization, has a strong advantage.
Excellent. All right. Before we jump to the next thing too, for people who are maybe interested in signing up with Hack the Box, what's the best website for them to go to?
Hackthebox.com.
Easy. HACKTHEBOX.com.
Exactly.
Hackthebox.com. All right. So, Haris, look, you sit in a very a chair with a great vision of what's going on in the industry. What are the security challenges that today, we need to face? What do you see as some of the biggest challenges, as some of the biggest trends out there in the security space today?
Well, the biggest trend still is ransomware. Yeah. Because, it's bulk. Many organizations actually believe that, especially on the SMB side, that they will not target me. I mean, they will target the big ones. That's not the case. They will simply target everyone. It's a bulk process. And the primary way by far is still through phishing. They start with a phishing mail. So I have 100,000 email addresses from various companies. I will send bulk to all, and we'll see which one, what fish we get. Having such a broad landscape of targets, it's sure that you will find someone and you will succeed as a cyber criminal. And then the monetization part is also very easy now with, the cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing also in most of the organizations is that they tend to focus and spend a lot of money on software and tools, not so much money on educating the human element, which for me is more important than the tool itself. So if we had an organization with open source tools, IP tables, firewalls, okay, and AVG antivirus or anything free, filled with extremely educated people on cybersecurity, would have less chances of being attacked rather than an organization that deploys massive capital in software and not so much capital on advancing the human element.
Agreed. Agreed. Look, this is an old story in security. The weakest link is still the person at the keyboard, right? And and it's also been a long-standing thing in security. We're always looking for a new magic bullet, a new tool, a new, piece of software or hardware that's going to protect us.
A tool is as good as its operator.
Exactly.
That's it.
And a chain is as good as its weakest link, right? You can have the greatest
Also
tools
true.
and the greatest operators in the world, but if someone clicks on something they shouldn't click on, it's trouble, right? And education and awareness, they're not just words. It's real things there. You spoke about the ransomware and SMB, medium-sized, smaller businesses. I think people need to realize that, right? We read about Colonial Pipeline and these large organizations and cities and governments, that are being asked to pay millions of dollars in ransomware, and there are deals, but there's also the bread and butter of what these ransomware gangs make come from the, 10,000, 20,000,
exactly.
30,000.
It's all a matter of volumes.
Yeah, it's a volume business. Now, one of the things we're seeing is the rise of these kind of ransomware insurance companies that will, insure you against ransomware and have, broad experience dealing with the different ransomware gangs and softwares out there. What are you seeing with that? Is that a help? Was it worth it? Obviously it's a little.
I think that the more you pay ransomware, the more you will fund this and you will make it even bigger.
So don't pay.
Yeah, my view is don't pay. It's very difficult, and obviously you can say that, but what if your ass is on fire, okay?
Right.
You are losing millions per day, and you know that you can spend 1 million and everything will go back to normal. So it's easy to say, it's very hard to implement.
Yeah. I think one of the other interesting things around the whole ransomware thing, Haris, is honor among thieves, right? That you're going to trust these people, that you're going to give them $1 million, 100,000, whatever, and they're going to make it back to the way it was. But of course, no guarantee they don't do it again, right? You're trusting them, and the whole premise of that is pretty. When you think about it, right? It's pretty ludicrous, right? I'm going to trust this person who
I don't know who he is, or who she is,
where they are, right? And they're not going to do it again. It's crazy, if you ask me. Crazy. So, is that what you're teaching the folks who do hack the box? Not to do the ransom. What did you do if not pay the ransom?
You do very good backups. You do offsite backups. You do cold storage backups. And you recover.
Yeah. That's what you do.
That's the way.
I will tell you here, I consider my company here, we're not very big, right? We're a small, medium business. And here's the thing, 99.9% of our infrastructure is SaaS-based, applications. And the SaaS providers are doing off-site backups and doing all that. So, in terms of being a target, it would be, a pain in the ass for a couple days maybe. But at the end of the day, our providers have all of our backups. Unless a provider it's a whole nother story.
Yeah, then it's a much bigger problem.
Much bigger problem than just me, exactly. Haris, beyond ransomware, what else? What else are you seeing? What about everybody's talking these days, software supply chain security, S-bombs, and this kind of thing.
Like the SolarWinds thing.
Yeah.
Okay, those are high-end, very targeted attacks. They would not target you or me, or they would go very specific. And truth be told, you can't avoid being hacked. That's a fact. The only thing that you can work on is how difficult you will make it for the criminal and how soon you will find out about it. Because it's a totally different story if you get hacked and you find out about it within the first minute, within the first hour, the first week, or the first year. Okay, the damage multiplies.
Yeah.
So it's all about defense is good and, securing your organization as much as you can, but monitoring is equally important. Figuring out any anomalies, someone got in, what did they take, what did they do, did they manage to do what they wanted, or did you manage to block them earlier?
Got it. Haris, we're about out of time. I want to thank you for coming on and telling us about Hack the Box. It's a great discussion. Again, it's hackthebox.com.
Yes.
Check it out. It sounds like a great program.
Thank you very much for having me, and looking forward to see you in Athens.
You know what? I'll let you know. Hopefully, maybe September, if not next spring. But be well, or if not in Athens, maybe at some security conference somewhere soon.
All right.
All righty. Haris
Take care.
Pilarinos, Hack the Box, here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to Techstrong TV. We've got another guest. It's actually the first time we've had this person and their company featured here on Techstrong TV, so we'll do a little background on that for you. But let me introduce you to Dominic Angaha. And if I mispronounce Angaha, if I mispronounce it, I apologize. Dominic is co-founder, CEO of Storyblok. That's STORYBLOK. No C. BLOK, Storyblok. Hey, Dominic, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan.
My pleasure. First, let's get it out of the way. You say your last name because you say it much better than I do.
Yeah, that would be Angerer. It's an Austrian
Angerer.
name, really hard to pronounce anything else in German.
All right, Angeher in Austrian. So, Dominic, give us the background on Storyblok and maybe a little bit of your own background.
Yeah, absolutely. So Storyblok is a headless content management solution. And to be honest, we didn't want to start a content management solution product or company back in the days. But when Alexander and myself, Alex is my co-founder, we had some challenges in an agency back in 2015. So it's been 7 years by now. And 7 years ago, we used an enterprise solution. They basically ran out of business. So we tried to find a new home for all our clients back in the agency. And we tried to find something that combines developer and marketers' needs into one product. So visual editor for marketers, but at the same time, a purely API data-driven application for developers to use that content. And guess what, Ellen? There's nothing. Or at least there wasn't. So we started doing that in 2016 with the first prototype. We gave it some clients, they loved it. We gave it some more clients who loved it as well. So in 2017, we decided to spin out of that agency, launch storyblok.com without a C because the domain was already gone. Soon after that, we had about 1,000 customers, then 3,000 3 months later, profitable after the first month. Then we scaled to 25,000 customers in 2 years, so until 2019. And then we got our first round. And today I'm really happy to announce that we raised 47 million additional funding. So a total of 58 million by now. And we've grown the team from 2 people to 200 people. We've grown from 20,000 customers to 120,000 customers worldwide. So really fast.
Fantastic. Congratulations, man.
Thanks so much.
You should be very proud of what you've done.
Dominic, let's talk a little bit about Storyblok. So when you say it's a headless CMS, it means basically it runs anywhere, no interface. What exactly do we got here?
Yeah, so headless comes from the idea of separating the display layer, the visual part of how the website looks like, how the app looks like, or even isn't a website or web kind of thing either. Like it could be anything. And this visual layer, this display layer, this is called a head. And since we do not provide that, so we only provide the data and stop there, we are so-called headless content management solution, because we are not a page builder where you can drag and drop your design together. We are headless content management solution that allows you to manage the content for those sites, for those applications, for iOS applications, Android applications, or 3D kind of environments as well.
I got it. So that's interesting because, I mean, look, obviously who doesn't use CMS, right? But here at Techstrong, for instance, we have, I don't know, a dozen and a half different websites and properties. And, finding a CMS that kind of, because we're kind of unique like that, right? We have all these different brands and stuff. It's hard. It's hard to find the right solution. And there's open source, there's commercial, there's all different kinds of solutions. But one that scales, one that allows you the freedom to kind of do what you want while also providing, the quality that you need in terms of performance and scalability and that. It's hard. So it's a hard thing. What do you think the attraction, why has Storyblock grown so quickly and had the success that it's had?
Yeah, so you mentioned already that for you, it's really, really hard to get all those unique different sites and challenges and designs and maybe even different content areas and structures into one solution. And the problem for us at the agency back in days was always that we tried to fit everything into one suitcase of how it can be built. But what we did with Storyblock is we tried to reverse that process of, hey, you get a tool and you define what kind of content models you want, reusable components, repeatable components as well. And you define even the fields and how they should behave for your content structure, exactly your content structure. And once you have that defined, not coded, just defined, we generate a complete management interface for you, which is the CMS part of us. So Storyblock is a complete management interface of content models that you define, content types that you define. And the cool thing is, why does it work for so many different clients and so many different use cases? Because we exactly don't do that additional step of going for the visual part, the display layer. Now we stop at the data level. So the whole team of yours, Alan, can create multiple spaces, which are basically multi-tenancy. Within Storyblock, one account, one user account, and you can just create multiple spaces. And depending on the space, you define a different content model. And suddenly you have all your complete content properties into one solution. And the best thing is all of this is accessible through APIs. So you can mix and match, you can write, create, update, read, delete, and even have a complete read-only API as well, globally at maximum speed. And that makes us different to normal CMSs because you can define and create it your way rather than us telling you how to build it.
Mm-hmm. Love it. That's great. So you mentioned when you did this, there was nothing like it in the market. I'm sure there are competitors out there now. And of course, look, everyone in tech the last couple months was seeing the market for the first time in a long time. People are worrying about what they spend, worrying about macroeconomic conditions, etc. Wondering how, and then here you are announcing a raise in the middle of all this, right? How is this affected? Does it help Storyblock? Makes no difference? What do you think?
So for us, as a company, it doesn't make a big difference because we are a complete software service solution. So we have recurring payments and our customer base is actually growing quite fast even now. It might not be accelerated through that, but the cool thing is given the current situation, everybody wants to save money on processes. They want to be faster at what they're doing to get more output of it. They tend to go for a solution that helps them achieve being faster. And that is exactly what Storyblock does. As soon as you have something like Storyblock in your solution stack, be it competitors of ours even, whatever is headless allows you to move faster. And so with Storyblock, customers like Education First, they're reduced, like they have sites in 54 different languages. And they brought it down from months of work to launch a new landing page 2 hours. And that alone is just a return of investment that you cannot really, you can measure it quite well, but you don't really expect to get from changing a CMS.
No, certainly not. What do you think, Dominic, like, what are the next killer features that people are looking for?
Yeah, so the next 3 that we have identified actually is, and it might not be actually surprising, but it's just something you really want to nail down on how you can build it. It's automation. So content automation, content flows to other solution, be it localization, localize, Lingo Hub, Trados, and something like that. But also just pushing your data and your content into other solutions, internal intranets, or something like that. That's one, like automation in general, like complete flow kind of builder. On the other hand, we do have the extensibility. People want to customize a platform, even though it's a software as a service solution. So we're going to open up a marketplace where other people can build extensions on top of Storyblock. So you can really customize it, basically everything you want. And the last thing that we see coming more and more is personalization. So personalization with headless is kind of interesting because a headless CMS doesn't know where the content is displayed. It just provides data, right? So now we're combining something that is personalization, which is actually happening on the site, in the app, on the platform that you're using, with how we can deliver content. And I guess those 3 features, those 3 elements will be the next thing that accelerates us. And actually, we're building all those 3 right now. So really good outlook on our roadmap.
Absolutely. How often do you have new feature, new releases kind of thing?
So we do have, once a complete new major version has been shipped, weekly builds. So once a week, we publish something. Every 2 weeks, we do have our sprint done. So you can expect bug fixes, new features every 2 weeks. From time to time, there's one major release. And actually on the 2nd of August, we'll have our V2 released, which is a complete rewrite, feature complete rewrite on a new technology. It doesn't need any migration. You really just click a button and everything works. And I'm not kidding. That's actually what you need to do. Clicking a button.
Great.
Yeah. And
I will tell you, we're recording this, but by the time it's played, it'll probably be about August 2nd, it's just next week, right? Next, I think, Tuesday. So, for people watching this August 2nd or later, you can go check out, where can they go get information on this latest release?
So storyblock.com/v2. It will also be online later on. And definitely need to be checked out because it's 3 times faster than the current solution. It's even higher performant if you have multi-tab open. So if you edit content on multiple screens, multiple windows at the same time, you can cross-copy elements and components. Wow. So a lot of things that really speeds up heavy users.
Who's the average customer?
Mm-hmm. So we separate Storyblock into 2 elements or areas. One is on the self-service side and one is on the enterprise side. In the self-service side, it's mostly developers that are building something for smaller SMBs. And those prices for those packages are between $99 and $449 a month. And then we have enterprise that go from 5 figures a year to 7 figures a year. And there we have a mixture of teams from 50 to 600 users building global interfaces, global different brand assets, and publishing different sites and projects with Storyblock.
Excellent. Dominic, what a great story. You guys are still based in Austria, or where are you based?
So yes, I'm based in Austria, but also the company is established in Austria, but our 200 people are sitting across 41 different countries. We are fully remote. We don't have offices. Even this setup right now where you can see is basically just my home office and nothing else.
Very cool. Hey, man, what a great story. Congratulations. Continued success to you and all the Storyblock folks. Come back on and keep us posted, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alan.
All right. Storyblock with a K. That's STORYBLOK. Go check it out, storyblock.com. V2 is the new version, if you're interested. This is Alan Schimmel on Techstrong. We're going to take a quick break.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, we're back here in Valencia at KubeCon Day 2. It is a bustling, excited crowd, and we're right here in the middle of it. You guys can't see it because you're facing this way, but as we look out, you just see people walking around, and it's early here. I think there might still be, the keynotes went off this morning.
9 o'clock?
Yeah. So, but, there's the sessions going on. I've heard numbers of about 8,000 people here. I don't know if that's accurate. But anyway, let me introduce you to our next two guests. This gentleman might be familiar if you've seen any of our Fairwinds coverage and webinars. It's Kendall Miller.
Yep.
And joining Kendall and myself is Danielle Cook. Danielle is CMO?
VP of Marketing at Fairwinds.
Tell them I put you in for a
hey.
promotion, but no, VP of Marketing. And Kendall, your title?
Tech Evangelist.
Absolutely. So guys, let's start with this though. We were talking offline, I happen to be a fan. We had some traffic going on there. I happen to be a Fairwinds fan. Whenever I'm able to log on to your webinars or see what's doing, I just love the messaging. I love the way you guys approach helping DevOps people.
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone watching this may be familiar with Fairwinds. So I'm going to ask, you're the evangelist,
I'm the
Kendall.
evangelist, yeah.
Do your thing. Tell people what's Fairwinds about.
Sure. So Fairwinds has been in business about 7 years. Been a Kubernetes company for the vast majority of that time, almost 6 years, just focused on Kubernetes. For a long time, it was build and maintain Kubernetes clusters for companies in a service capacity. About 3 years ago, after releasing a bunch of open source, we pivoted hard towards software, and today we make a SaaS product that gives people confidence in using Kubernetes. Kubernetes in particular is still a very new paradigm. I like to say it's like switching from Windows to Linux. It's not that Linux is hard, it's that Linux is new if all you've ever used is Windows. It's different. And Kubernetes is different. And so we build software that gives people confidence that they're using it right. And particularly today, it's less about standing up Kubernetes clusters. That was the hard problem 5-6 years ago. Today you can go to any of the major cloud providers, click a button, get a Kubernetes cluster. What's hard is enabling your developers to have confidence that what they're deploying into the cluster is correctly configured. Have you set resource requests and limits? Have you over-permissioned the container? Have you, all of those things we approach from security, reliability, and then we also address cost management. And that's what Fairwinds Insights, our software, does.
Very cool. But I think it is that heritage of being a consultant, of being an integrator, of being people who actually had dirt in their, Kubernetes dirt in your fingernails.
Yeah.
That allows you to make software that understands the problems people are going to have.
Yeah.
And that's a very different approach than a lot of the companies that we see out here who, have serial entrepreneurs who have been building software, see a problem and say, okay, I'm going to solve that problem with some software.
Yep.
It's a different approach to how we're going to do this.
Yeah, and it's not a negative thing that they're approaching it differently.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's different. Windows, Linux, right?
Absolutely.
It's different. It's a different approach. But I think that's what I see when I talked about in the beginning is this approach is, hey, I've been in your shoes.
Absolutely.
Yep. We know your pain.
Yep.
Right? And look, I'm a serial entrepreneur many times over. And it takes the average company sometimes 3 to 5 years or more to really understand who their market is, who their personas are, what their pain is.
Yep.
Right? And then I could first start building something to help. And so, with your heritage, not your, but, Fairwind's heritage, I think it comes through loud and clear, and that's what I think I see.
I mean, we are committed to the community and helping raise awareness around what the problems are, and that's why we've open sourced a number of our tools. We have Polaris, we have Goldilocks. We're doing the things to make sure that DevOps and developers, when they're trying out Kubernetes, they can start small, and then as they grow and they start to scale and have multiple clusters and multiple teams, that's where our platform comes into play, because it's really helping all of these DevOps not be a help desk anymore, to actually enable the developers to do the things that they need to do, move faster. I mean, that's the whole point of cloud native and Kubernetes.
Well, so again, a common thing I see, right, is scale. You could use an open source tool, 2, 3, different open source tools. You could have different pockets. But when you want to start scaling is when you got to start that's when, that's the switch.
Operationalizing it at scale is one of the key differentiators.
I think that's the big thing.
I mean, I tell people, if you have 1 or 2 clusters, go install these 5, 6, 12 open source projects, keep them up to date. It's a little bit of a headache, but it'll work.
Yeah.
But if you have 10 clusters or 15 clusters or 500 clusters, all of a sudden maintaining that many projects running in that many clusters it's not just difficult, it's literally untenable.
Yeah, you're not going to do it.
Right.
No, not for long anyway.
Yep.
So a major focus for Fairwinds, though, Danielle, you were saying, is security recently, right? We're really focusing in here. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our platform looks at the security side, the cost side, and the policy enforcement side of Kubernetes. With security, we're looking at it from a different point of view, in that we're making sure you're configuring Kubernetes correctly, you're configuring your containers correctly, so that you're not introducing unnecessary risk. Kendall gave a few examples, you're not over-provisioning containers, you're not running containers as root. So we've made some announcements at this show where we've added additional features, auto-scanning features, so that you're making sure Helm and YAML is scanned. You're doing all the things that your developers may know about, but again, if you're doing it across multiple clusters, you're not going to catch everything. We're all human, we make mistakes, so we're a layer of protection.
There's a lot of folks who are approaching the security problem from, let's figure out how to lock everything down as tight as possible. And our entire approach is, let's configure things the correct way. Give your developers confidence that they've configured things correctly. And configuration is a huge percentage of the problem in security. If you're deploying,
80%.
if you're deploying things with known CVEs, you're going to have a problem. If you're deploying deprecated things, you're going to have a problem. If you're deploying over-permissioned things, you might not have a problem, but when you have a problem, you're going to have a bigger problem. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
So I've been in the security business for about 25 years, right? That's my background before this. I started a security company, co-founded, and a long time security person. I remember writing a paper in maybe 2006 about, it's not the 0 days that are going to kill you. Right? Yes, there's always 0 days. There's unknown vulnerabilities or just defects in software. We all, and we've seen a lot of them recently, Log4j and this whole thing. But the fact of the matter is that something like 80 or 85% of security incidents are like garden variety, just pure misconfiguration, using very old software that there's been 2 iterations, two patches or 2 versions of at least old, and that if you could just take care of that, the 0 days aren't going to kill you. Yeah, you might be a target for some geopolitical hacker or something.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is particularly in the world of DevOps, right, as we've shifted things left and engineers own their service all the way through to production. They own their outages. They get paged when there's a problem. They get paged when there's a security incident. Like, they don't want to create these problems, but in a new paradigm like Kubernetes, they don't know how to avoid it. And it's not malice. It's not even incompetence. It's a new paradigm. And so giving people guardrails so that they don't mess up. Right. I mean, again, give an example of like walking alongside a cliff's edge. When you're a small company, you can send an escort with every single person as they walk along that cliff's edge to make sure they're careful. What we've done is build a railing along that cliff's edge so that at scale you can have lots of people going down and you don't have to worry about them falling off.
Absolutely. And again, it's the scale issue.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you can't automate this,
right,
it's very, very, I don't even, forget the security expert issue, right? We don't have enough security experts to, even if you're a small company, to escort everyone along that edge.
It's true.
It's just not. But automation is the key, especially as we scale up, especially for things like configuration. Now, look, when I first started DevOps.com, that was supposed to be one of the great things about Chef and Puppet and Ansible. My configurations were going to be a gold, I had a gold config.
Yep.
And I was just, boom, like replicated, and then if I had to make a change, I changed it once, and immutable infrastructure, right? I knock it all out. It don't really work like that, we found, right?
Yep.
As much as we'd like it to work like that.
Yeah.
And,
finish your thoughts.
No, go ahead. I think that's the issue.
So then in Kubernetes, rather than writing code that you're applying actively to things, you're just writing declarative YAML, right? And so in theory, it should be easy. But the problem is Kubernetes is so flexible. And that's the power of it. That's why it took over, is anybody from large enterprise to small company can use it. But you have to get that YAML right. You have to be writing, and there's so many basic things in that YAML that unless you know, and so it's really in that shifted left world. We're giving, how do I say this? Our software can both bring up a gigantic, overwhelming list for security and DevOps to look at and say, oh my gosh, there's so many things wrong with what we're doing. But that's not very useful, because then they're going to panic and be like, I already know there's things I'm not doing right. But by shifting those problems left so that developers are going to improve those things over time, all the platform team has to do is put in place those guardrails. And now everything from merge request, pull request, to CI/CD and into the admission controller, we have checks all along the way to scan the code and make sure that things are improving over time, so that it's not just the platform team. Go ahead.
And it isn't just security and the guardrails around that. It's about going, well, what is this costing us? So cloud cost is a huge deal.
Well,
organizations
cloud cost has become, and quite. Look, frankly, it's not just Fairwinds. Almost every company I'm coming in here over the last 2 days is talking about that, right?
Yeah.
How do we get a handle? Because here's the other thing, and I don't know, somehow it crept into the way we do business, which is like cloud costs. Well, if I'm a developer, I may want to factor cloud costs in to what I'm building. How I'm building it, what I'm using. But for many organizations, cloud cost doesn't come in until after I deploy it. 30 days after that, the CFO and his team gets a bill, and they say, holy mackerel, what is this? And they give it back to the CIO, who kicks it back down. And then it's like playing that one of those like things, and then all of a sudden, hey, developer, you realize this 10x the cost of what it was.
Well, and Kubernetes is a black hole. You don't know what workload is costing in there. Right. So our platform too looks at the configuration side of it and recommends, like, if you change this configuration or that, you're going to optimize your cost. You're not going to be wasting money, or you need to scale up and give that application more resource because you're not going to have a reliable application.
Absolutely.
So we look at it from that holistic point of view of how do we configure this right? How do we get the developers doing it faster? How do we free up DevOps times?
And it's not 30, 60, 90 days. Because now, imagine going back to the developer and saying, that stuff you did 90 days ago, man, that was wrong, or it was way not efficient. 90 days. Where have I been 90 days ago? I don't remember where I was yesterday.
And this is Spain, so I think the CFO says holy anchovies,
Holy
or I don't know what
like
it's
that.
probably
I
not
like the
mackerel.
anchovies. But I haven't had the white anchovies. I've been looking.
There you go. That's right.
Anyway, hey man, we're about out of time, I suspect. But we're going to have more folks here all day from Valencia, Spain for Kubernetes. Go Fairwinds. We didn't mention the website.
Oh, fairwinds.com.
All right, check it out. This is Alan Schimmel. We're live at Kubernetes Cloud Native Conf. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is Techstrong TV.
All right, we're here live back at RSA Conference, Moscone West. It's day 3, Wednesday, working through the afternoon. My next guest, I'm really happy to have him on. It's a company we really haven't interviewed before, and I want you to find out all about them. It's Grant Miller. Grant is the CEO of Replicated, right? We got it right,
That's
Grant?
it. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, Grant, I guess we got to start with the obvious question, which is, hey, man, share what's Replicated about?
Yeah, sure. So we started Replicated about 7.5 years ago, and the whole vision of the company was to change the way that enterprise software was actually packaged and delivered. And so my co-founder and I had started a separate company previously. It was acquired by a publicly traded SaaS company called LivePerson. We ran a lot of the infrastructure projects there. And ultimately what we realized is that the way that sort of the underlying components, that the way that software is built was changing. And it was changing around containerization and ultimately like Kubernetes.
Sure.
And so what we realized is that, instead of having to send data out to thousands of different software vendors and SaaS companies, that a modern way to do this would allow for software vendors to actually deliver their applications to where the data already resides. And so what we're talking about doing is basically shifting the model of kind of on-prem and SaaS delivery, blending those together so that you're actually getting the benefits of both in a way that any enterprise can actually deploy kind of a fully operationalized and reliable version of modern applications into infrastructure that they can control. So this could be a customer's air-gapped environment. This could be an end customer's VPC, so they could deploy it into their own cloud. It still could be part of the cloud, but it's going to be their cloud, their AWS account versus the vendor's AWS account. And what happens by doing this is we actually enable both the software vendor to sort of deliver more securely to all this variety of different environments, but we enable the enterprise end user to consume fewer SaaS applications and to actually operationalize these sort of modern on-prem applications in a much easier way. So instead of an IT admin who's maybe managing 1 or 2 different applications, they can leverage Kubernetes to actually operate hundreds, if not thousands of applications in that secure environment.
Got it. So just let me poke holes for a little bit.
Please.
I'm sure there's not real holes, but I want to make sure we're clear. So you already have let's say you have a little bit of on-prem, a little bit of cloud infrastructure. That's what your data is providing. Instead of using some third-party apps that are SaaS-driven, we're going to use the on-premise version of those third-party apps, but put them up in a kube stack, and all that entails, so that I can control it, whether it be on-prem, in the cloud, both, whatever, but I control it is the bottom line.
Yeah, basically. So what we think about is Kubernetes has become kind of the common substrate for enterprise.
It's compute.
Yeah, and so what happens now is you have these machine-readable manifests, right? Like a Kubernetes manifest or a Helm chart. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the operational knowledge of how to actually run that application is sort of described in those manifests. Yep. So unlike, 10, 12, 20 years ago, where on-prem software was a binary, right? A jar, a war, an OVA. You're actually delivering kind of a fully orchestrated, horizontally scalable and somewhat self-healing application. And you're delivering it to an environment that understands how to actually receive that instruction, receive those machine-readable manifests, and operate that application effectively, and actually update it effectively and roll it out in a way that can scale and can handle the resiliency. And so that's really kind of a lot of companies. So the thing I talk about is Replicated we're not inventing Kubernetes. We're not inventing
Certainly
Helm.
not, right?
We're not. What we're doing is saying, look, most enterprise software is going to shift from being delivered as these sort of like binaries and OVAs, and it's going to become Kubernetes applications. And our tooling just makes that so much easier for software vendors to actually do it. And we end up with a lot of incredible security companies, right? So folks like Swimlane or Cylance or, we've got Forward Networks and all these great companies that are using our technology to underlying how they deliver their enterprise version. And on the DevOps side, it's like companies like HashiCorp and Circle CI, all using our technology to kind of power the distribution of their enterprise versions.
So let me internalize it, make sure I spit it out right.
Please.
So what we're talking about Replicated doing is the very companies that are making those third-party apps, such as some of the ones you mentioned, are using Replicated to make their app portable, if we can use that word.
Sure.
Right? Portable in the sense where I don't have to host it for you. You can host it yourself in your own coop. So so that's right.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's like those companies, commercial software vendors use Replicated's tooling to operationalize and scale the delivery of their Kubernetes application into hundreds, if not thousands, of end customer environments. And you need that because like the end customers have differing sort of experiences with Kubernetes. So some might need you to actually package up Kubernetes underneath the hood and install it into a VM. And so we make that possible. Some might have an existing cluster and they want you to provide a UI around installing it. Some might, prefer a Helm-based installation. And our tooling basically provides all the different like ways of doing the installation, the updates and integration. Think about it like, GitHub Enterprise, which, we really looked at that as like this great experience for installing an enterprise on-prem application. And we looked at like all the tooling they had around support bundle collection, around, configuration. And we said like, well, why don't we build kind of a common abstracted way for any software vendor to use this? And, we launched a company 7.5 years ago, have continued to work with, folks in dev tooling, operations tooling, security, AI, all using our stuff because it turns out, the on-prem software market is still about $500 billion a year.
Oh, absolutely.
And so there's still a ton of money.
We forget that.
Yeah,
right?
we forget that, right? Everyone thinks the future is all SaaS.
No, we've already been in SaaS. It's not the future, it's the now.
Yeah.
Look, I've been coming to RSA for 20 years.
Yeah.
There's a problem in security, right? As soon as we have a shiny new trinket, we forget all about, like all of a sudden those don't exist anymore. Oh, that's 2 years ago.
Exactly.
But that 2 years old stuff there's still a lot of it. So let me ask a question then. For a lot of software vendors, SaaS was a godsend for them.
Sure.
Especially open source guys, right? Open source, business models. Because now, look, you could use the software yourself on-prem. It's hard as hell. But it's open source and free. Go ahead, have at it. Or take our hosted version and we charge you. And at the end of the day, right? That's our business model. Does this negate that, or this is an extension of the hosted version that you host? Much like GitHub Enterprise, for instance.
Yeah, so like you can talk about open source companies. Like I think, we have a bunch of different open core companies that use our technology already, but, a company that doesn't use us, but is a great example because they're publicly traded would be GitLab as well, right? So GitLab, they have their open source, but like 90% of their revenue comes from their enterprise edition, right? More than 50% of GitHub's comes from their on-prem edition. And so what I think we're seeing is that the ability to run an application in somebody else's environment is getting easier because of Kubernetes, because you can package so much of that operational knowledge.
Yes.
And so you don't necessarily have to only offer a SaaS version. I think like the world that, most people talk about and imagine seems to always be kind of this like either or, right? Like, black and white. And we think about it, the future as like shades of gray with many different deployment options that need to exist across that spectrum. You could have like fully SaaS hosted. You could have, a SaaS product that delivers, a data plane on-prem. You could have a entire, control plane and data plane on-prem. You could have air-gapped environments. And being able to sort of address all of those different customer needs is super important for software vendors because it turns out like, not everyone wants to run the same thing. Not everyone has this, like, not every end customer is going to trust the security posture from your vendor security questionnaire with their most trusted data, right? Particularly a lot of these AI companies are so data heavy and data hungry. Like, you're trying to get, the crown jewels more or less. And instead,
well, it's not only the crown jewels. Trusting their data in a cloud is expensive as hell.
Sure.
Right? I mean, there's a company, they're probably exhibiting here, who their go-to-market is, we could store your data for you at a tenth of the cost that Splunk does and do that same sort of analysis. And they're very successful. They raised a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the measure of success, but
sometimes it is.
Yeah, but they raised a lot of money on that ticket. I think the other thing you have going for you, though, too, is, look, Kubernetes is still fairly hard, right? If you're doing vanilla Kubernetes, it's hard, which is why we have all the different distros and sort of UIs and, stuff built on top that kind of makes it a little bit more palatable, a little bit more easier to use. So if you have an app that can't be SaaS for whatever reason, or you don't want it to be, something that'll make it easier to be portable in a Kube environment is a godsend.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for us, right, we think about, one of our vendors, right, HashiCorp or Circle CI. These are really talented, DevOps companies that understand Kubernetes in and out, but ultimately they don't want to deliver the tooling that allows, their software to get installed.
They don't want to be Kubernetes supporters either.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so we do provide that tier 2 and 3 support. We have 24/7 follow the sun support for our end customers. Like, we just think the future, again, is these shades of gray, and customers deserve different, optionality on how they might want to deploy it, because not every security program is looking at, data security the exact same way. And so, we think the companies that win are the ones that actually honor those customer needs and don't try to, have some type of religion around it has to all be SaaS or it has to all be one way or the other. And so being flexible for customers, we think is just it's how you win.
So I'm older than you, obviously. I remember when when SaaS first started, there was a lot of pushback. I'll give you, for instance, a good friend of mine who unfortunately passed away last year was Philippe Cortel from Qualys.
Oh, sure.
And so I had one of the companies I co-founded had a vulnerability assessment management tool, 2005. And Philippe's out here pushing Qualys. It wasn't called cloud, but Qualys, not on-prem.
Yeah.
Right. And, I used to go, especially in the federal government, you talk about air gap. It's sold a lot to the government. I said, you're going to trust this guy to keep your vulnerability data somewhere, God knows where, instead of in your own hands? And the thing, the counter to that from SaaS vendors was, look, not everything should be SaaS all the time. Not everything should be on the premises all the time, but you should have the power of deciding how you want to deploy an app. I want it on-prem. I want it SaaS. Back then, those were your two choices.
Yeah.
Now you're saying, well, no, now you have more choices.
Yeah.
I could be partially SaaS and partially on-prem. I could pick and choose what parts of this I want to do.
And when you mix in the VPCs, that option, it kind of, makes it even cloudier, right?
Absolutely. And especially when you're talking about microservice-based applications that you can really
distribute them in different parts, different places. That's the sort of data plane, control plane model that you see a lot of times.
All right, it took me 15 minutes, but I got it.
You got there. Yeah. You got there. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about it, though. For people who want to get more information about Replicated and join in, how do they do this?
Yeah, just go to replicated.com. You can sign up for a free trial. You can reach out for a demo. Our team's there. We've got probably a bunch of different other content you can look at. We have a great podcast if you're interested in Kubernetes called the Kube List.
Okay, very cool.
Got a great podcast called the Enterprise Ready Podcast. If you want to listen to me talk to founders about how they built their software. We try to be good community members. We spend a lot of time in the Kubernetes ecosystem. Yeah, it's our first time actually with a booth at RSA.
What's your opinion? Well, man. So this is my 20th something.
Yeah.
RSA. So 2019, 2020 was the last normal ones. They were 40, 45,000. So this is only about half.
Yeah.
But you get an idea of crazy.
It's there's a lot out there. It's a real circus down there. So
oh yeah, it is. I went down the escalator. I looked around. As far as the eye could see were booths.
Yeah.
I put on my mask and I got the heck out. But yeah, that's pretty much what it looks like.
I mean, it can
almost be too big.
It's pretty big. I had to walk around down there for a while.
Yeah, it takes you some time.
I mean, but for me, every one of those vendors, I'm like, hey, I got to help them all.
This is what they call a target-rich environment.
It very much is. You know, everyone needs better ways to deliver their software.
Absolutely. Well, I think that could be in the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one possible outcome is that software, whether it's hosted, deployed locally, various combinations thereof, becomes, an individual's choice.
That's very much our goal, right?
Yep.
Give the companies the choice to deploy the software how they want, where they want. Have a little more control, basically decide where the data is going to go, right?
Yeah,
that idea of sending data out to thousands of vendors becomes pretty risky. If you can bring the applications to your own environment, run them in a really automated way, we can make them more reliable, make them more secure. We think it's a really interesting model for the future.
I love it. Hey, Grant,
thanks
so much. Very much, man.
It was
a pleasure. Great conversation. We're going to take a break here from RSA. Well, we have some more interviews coming up today. We'll have more tomorrow. We're also taping a bunch at our other studio location over at the Marriott Marquis. So we'll be porting those out for next week. But we're going to have a break. We'll be back in a moment.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
All right, welcome back to Techstrong TV live at RSA Conference here in San Francisco. So very excited to be back in person, and we are filling up this hall, and there's a lot of people here, and I'm having so many great conversations. And with me now is Nikhil Gupta, who is the CEO and co-founder over at Armor Code. Nikhil, thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So we actually just talked not too long ago about an event that we hosted for you guys, a virtual event called AppSecCon. What a great event that was. You guys brought together some of the best folks in the application security space for the event, and by all points, it was a success. So lots of great conversations happening there. But I want to kind of hear from you what you guys are seeing in the application security space. But before we do that, I don't know if you want to let us know all about Armor Code for those people who might not be familiar with you.
Sure. So for those who doesn't know Armor Code is building the AppSecOps platform of choice. While application development has transformed a lot, from monolithic to microservices, waterfall to agile, and plethora of use of open source, application security has been painful and not scalable. So, for every application, you need at least over a dozen tools, SES, ASP, like whole bunch of the tools, and you generate a lot of false positive. Number two, these tools outputs are not talking to each other. You put it into Excel sheet, so you're living in Excel hell. And, we have like application security, operations, and engineering team. These are three opposite organizations with aligned interest. And last but not the least, there's one AppSec engineer to 100 developers, so that makes it even more difficult. So basically, Armor Code AppSecOps platform provides 4 things. One is the application security posture management. It gives you a complete 360-degree view of your applications, your security posture and all. Second thing is the universal vulnerability management, because you don't need a vulnerability management and a DevSecOps platform. So while you are getting information for our AppSecs, you can also get it from the infrastructure and you can prioritize them. Third thing is the DevSecOps automation and orchestration, because everybody wants to do it. When you're releasing once a day or several times a day, you need automation. And last but not the least, when the software is changing so fast, you need to have continuous compliance. So Armor Code AppSecOps platform gives a complete solution for all these needs.
That's great. That's great. So do you guys have any announcements here at the show?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we actually very recently did, and I'll briefly talk about the AppSecOn conference. Sure. And thanks for helping us with that. That was the world's largest digital application security conference. In the very first conference, we have more than 2,200 registrations. And for those who arranges these registrations, how difficult it is to attract people, and we got a 4.7 out of 5 rating. And we had some very good key speakers like Phil Venables, Bashar, and a lot of those people showed up. And in fact, we were offering CPE credit, so a lot of people benefited from that.
Oh, great.
So that conference was great. At the same time, we also announced our application security survey, State of AppSec survey results. And the number one challenge why application security is not being done is because of the challenge of hiring people. And so as a result, we are constantly listening to our customers and the industries. So number one announcement is a no-code automation. So for instance, like SolarWinds happened in December 2020. So Log4j happened in December 2021, and it's a matter of time, and people are expecting what will come next. It's not if, it's what will come in 2022. So you need to automate that. So AppSecOps platform, we have no-code automation. You can entire runbook to simplify that operations. Number 2 here, we have customers have been complaining there's a lots of data, but there's no visibility. So we are announcing that we have touched 110 plus integrations. So those of you who don't know, like government companies will take 2 or 3 integrations in like a quarter or so. We have done 110 plus integrations. So not only we are covering application security tools integrations, cloud security, posture management configurations, and container configurations. And then the third thing, which is very painful for the customers, is there's a friction between the developer and the security people. And as a result, we have launched a knowledge-based product, basically, which is a key capabilities where the developers don't have to go and search about it on the internet and get some spurious codes over there. They can leverage from what their past predecessors have done. So these are the 3 key announcements, and we are super excited about that.
Yeah, wow, that's really beneficial on so many levels. What you guys are adding to the platform, and especially with visibility is a huge issue these days. So the fact that you guys are addressing that as well is very, very, very cool, I think. So let's talk a little bit about this AppSecCon event. As part of that, you guys introduced us to the Purple Book community. So tell me a little bit about Purple Book and what it aims to do.
Yeah, so Purple Book community is a security of the security people by the security people. So a couple of years ago, when I was starting Armor Code, one thing which I realized that application security, product security, or software security, it's bigger than any individual company, right? So it's bigger than Armor Code and all, and it needs a community to solve this problem. It's not an individual problem. So we brought a bunch of security leaders like Sean and others who are from various Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies. And it's like an area where people come in, they talk twice a month. And in fact, we are launching 10 new chapters of Purple Book community.
Really?
So,
wow.
So exactly. So we started with the local Bay Area chapter. And in fact, we are kind of going to go international. We are looking to open in India, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Middle East. So that's, you can see that how much excitement is there and how much value people are deriving. So it was started as a community of just 30 people. We launched a book, Purple Book, which actually just got released also at AppSecCon. And so it's an open source book. People can go and learn the contents and everything else. So first things first is people need to educate themselves, and application security is so new that you cannot go to a university and kind of learn it over there.
Right.
So the best people are to teach are also the security leaders. So that's where the few of us got together and we are sharing that content. And that's what people are really liking it. Part of that offshoot was an application security conference, AppSecCon, because people realized that, hey, there is no, like, of course, we have a RSA, but it's RSA for security for everything. But there was no focus conference, if you will, for application security. So that is what we kind of got together with that. And so in Purple Book, again, so it's now become a movement because we have thousands of people up showing for the AppSecCon. And now we are getting inbound from all over the world, literally all over the world. People are like, we want to bring this community to our local thing so that other people can benefit.
That's great. That's great. Love to hear groundswell opportunities like that, and just raising the collective profile of application security is certainly something that the Purple Book community is very much doing. And I expect great things from the Purple Book community moving forward. And Armor Code as kind of the steward of that, you guys are doing great things as well. Great news on the new features that you guys have announced here at RSA. So many good things happening with you. So what's next for Armor Code?
So Armor Code, we had a big vision when we started. We have a solid based platform as we speak. And now the platform is ready and we are just constantly listening to customers are adding. We had a phenomenal year of sales. So we had our first year of sales end of March. And we kind of, quote unquote, we are here to set records. We set a record. We create a very good revenue over there. We signed one Big Four as a customer who's offering MSSP services on top of our platform. And now it's just growth, right? So all I say is build and sell, if you will, when it comes to the company, right? Build the product and sell the product. And of course, give back through the community.
Great. Well, Nikhil, thank you so much for stopping by, telling us what's going on with Armor Code. And it's great to see you in person, live and in person.
Absolutely. I'm so glad. And thanks for having me again.
Great. Yes, absolutely. All right.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We've got lots more Techstrong TV interviews coming on up here at RSA Conference live in San Francisco. So please do stay tuned. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Cody J. Brown here again with some upcoming programs from Techstrong Learning. So first up next Tuesday, August 9th at 11 a.m. Eastern, Sumo Logic has partnered with AWS to present DevOps Institute's inaugural 2022 Global SRE Pulse Survey. Hosted on DevOps.com, our panel will discuss the skills needed, the adopted practices, and challenges that faces a site reliability team. Next, on Wednesday, August 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern, we have a program titled VSM, an ideal framework for continuous security dashboards. Brought to you by Plutora, we have two frequent flyers in Mark Hornbeek and Bob Davis, who are both joining us to explain what continuous security is and how to leverage value stream management when approaching security visibility. Finally, on Wednesday, August 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern, join us and Tim Stilling with Connect All for a workshop where you will leave with the tools you need to manage your value stream, improve the speed and quality of your software development, and reduce costs by eliminating waste. This workshop will be hosted on DevOps.com and is sponsored by Connect All. So that's all I've got for you right now. Everyone have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Monday on Techstrong TV.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, welcome back to KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. I'm joined by Victor Gemov, who is Principal Developer Advocate with Kong. Welcome.
Long-time listeners, first-time caller. It's great to be on the show.
Hey, we're glad to have you on. You made it through the screening.
Yes, that was great.
Awesome.
It's great to be here. Just to be here with the real people, not Zoom calls or whatnot.
So that's not like a screen. We're looking at it.
Yeah,
and exactly. It's a little familiar and foreign at the same time.
Yeah,
right?
it feels a little bit weird. We kind of we used to do this, but after that we stopped, and then should we get back to this? Well, yeah.
Yesterday I was walking through, and it's like, backpacks, t-shirts, developers. This is my people. I love this.
We're getting back. We're back. Yes.
It's great to be back. Well, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Kong too.
Yes, I work as a principal developer advocate at Kong. At Kong, we're cloud API connectivity platform. Everything started at Kong as an API gateway, and Kong right now is roughly 32,000 stars on GitHub. It's a pretty popular API gateway in the world, also open source. And we're starting to exploring different aspects of the API connectivity and how we can help developers to build their apps and move their apps to production. And for the last couple years, we spent a lot of time on contributing to Kuma, which is a CNCF open source service mesh project. And also we have developer tools. Insomnia, it's one of the tools that developers like to use to testing their APIs, like REST, gRPC, GraphQL, what have you. So and I like to just talk to people and try to help them to understand how they can solve the problems with our tools. Things around in service meshes, sometimes people think, I'm so confused, what is that? What's the difference of the API gateway and the service mesh? How are they similar? So that's my type of conversation I have.
I was just going to ask you that, if you would talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think we can envision API gateway and how that might function and what that does for discovery and that kind of thing. How does that fit with service mesh? What's the connection there?
So I think an example
no pun intended. But
yeah. That's a good one. I think the example that I usually like to tell people depends on where you're coming from. So if people more or less familiar with the API gateway or the idea of gateway as a enterprise integration pattern, like awesome book in the past, learn different patterns, how you can build the apps, and API gateway implementation. Gateway pattern is something that sits in between your consumers of your API and your API servers, and does some of the things that you didn't put into logic of your service for some reasons. API gateways provides the ways how you can encrypt traffic, provided things around traffic shaping, rate limiting, caching, and all this type of stuff.
Authentication, access control.
Yeah. I like to compare this to, you go into a bar and there's a bouncer that's meeting you, and basically it can be this bouncer, and you can show him this ID and saying that, hey, I'm kind of want to go inside, and it validates this. Even though your barman that sits, bartender, sits inside the bar, don't need to check the ID for everyone. So because it was checked on the gateway level, it means that you admit it and you're good to go. Mm-hmm. So once you get into the party during this thing, this is where you kind of joining by someone that introduces you to the crowd. And this is where you kind of joining the part of the mesh, and you getting this first bootstrap configuration information about the topology. What are the services? There is the Gary, he is our order service. This is the Steve, he's our the email service. And you get this information already inside this kind of party. And after that you just say, okay, so now I need to send the order, so I will call the Gary, and after that Gary will probably call the Steve to send emails to our user. So that's kind of the idea where you have someone that sits in front of your traffic. It's a gateway, and the service mesh helps you to do discovery, gives you our communication secure because you're already inside and you can go freely talk to everyone, because inside there no one else will be able to get in. So you have this secured communication using MTLS.
Well, and also, it's a great analogy, also that service mesh is constantly changing too. Yep. I mean, Gary, the order taker service, might be split. You might have new functionality that gets either in that service or pulled off into another one. And you don't want to have to go find out about those changes, the hard way, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to have a place to go where your apps know, okay, that's the API that I use, or that API is now here, and I don't need to know that it's a different service, right? I'm still talking to it, that kind of thing. Well, what's there's a great vibe here. I think everybody's happy to be back together and be talking software. What's your sense of the vibe? I mean, what kind of cool things are happening?
So the cool things are happening, just like things are happening. That's the most cooler thing that actually happened. But from perspective of the community that I'm close to, like we did before KubeCon started, I was a part of Service Mesh Con. I was helping with creating the program. I was a part of the program committee to help pick up some of the good talks, and that would be interesting and innovative talks from the different vendors and contributors from different open source projects to talk about the service mesh technology in general and maybe some of the specifics. It looks like this year there's a lot of conversation about how we can make service mesh more accessible for users, and different the vendors and different people have opinions about what components of the service mesh needs to be simplified. There's good talks around the core of most known service meshes, like this kind of a sidecar container that built on top of Envoy project. And one of the announcements that happened during the, literally on the day of the Service Mesh Con, is that Envoy community announced that they also will be providing a gateway API support. So Kubernetes Special Network Interest Group, Network Special Interest Group, working on designing this standard gateway API for Kubernetes that will allow to kind of like define things more granularly versus ingress. And now the two CNCF projects, Contour and Emissary, they will be joining forces, and they will be joining as a one. They're merging, and they will be joining as a kind of like a Envoy gateway. That's exciting news because, like with Kong, where kind of our gateway story was bread and butter, we were working together with this special interest group to shape the standard, but also we implemented this on the Kong side of things and on Kuma side of things as well. So we already implemented the Envoy-based gateways, and we implemented Kong-based gateways as well. So that's exciting things, and it looks like we were doing a lot of, and we're happy to join the movement and the help to contribute to those projects, and it's a pretty exciting future. I hope next year I will be sitting here and talking about like how this project was successful, and like adoption of Gateway API was quite broad, and like people like to use it.
I can see why you'd be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. There's definitely a momentum increase around open source projects collaborating. Yep. Coming together, becoming one, or whatever it might be. Where there's open telemetry, on the observability side is a real successful
It's very
one.
much similar that happened between the open. It was like open census, and it was open tracing. Yeah, and they joined forces, and now we have an open telemetry.
And I think that's happening. We're seeing more and more of that, as opposed to there's some competing ideas too, but then there's also people realize there's a lot of commonality, and they'll come together and collaborate, and so it's just we've kind of reaching a new level of collaboration through open source.
Still a trust in the humanity, and at least as a like a technology part of the world, we can, instead of fighting against some of the disagreements, like I don't know, like tabs versus spaces, we can have support both, and unless you have a strong opinion about this, so or like a Vim versus Emacs or this type of stuff.
You can't let it turn into the standards war. Some of those discussions are a little
right. Discussions can
stomach
really
churning.
heated.
I
Yes.
don't want to go there. Well, cool. It's great that you stopped by. So talk about some of the things that folks can do if they go to the Kong website and what you have available for people to check out.
So essentially, personally, I work on like a video side of things. I love doing like YouTube videos, and if they go to Kong YouTube channel, I would appreciate if they go to Kong YouTube channel, Kong Inc.
Subscribe, like.
Yeah, like, subscribe, all these things, exactly. And on conghq.com, you can find a extensive documentation around the things. There's a documentation around the open source side of things. There will be some of the things marked as an enterprise. So Cong is a commercial open source company. We do a lot of open source work, but also we have the business side of the house that helps to fuel this. We like to call it as a kind of like a flywheel. So we use some of the innovations that we develop during the open source and put this as a kind of like a business side of things, and we use money from this to sponsor some of the open source work, like Cong Ingress Controller that I already mentioned, that has like a gateway API implementation, and the projects like Kuma and the projects like Insomnia, open source, and community like quite active there. So we're happy to have this kind of balance between the open source and commercial side of things.
I think that's key today, to be in the developer space. You've got to be credible in open source, as well as your own technology in which you do.
For us, open source was always part of DNA. Like the way how the Cong started, the founders were basically started the API marketplace side of business, and they were successfully sold this part of the business to Rapid API. I guess it's back in 2015-ish, and they open sourced the technology that was driving this thing. So they open sourced Cong, and since then we just like only going onwards with the adoption, and people like to use it, and it's easy to use performance-wise. It's just great tool.
Part of software eating the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. yes, it is.
Well, Victor, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for sharing us a little bit about what's happening with the Envoy group and some of the open source projects and what Cong's doing.
Thank you for having me. It's great. It was nice to see you, Mitch. And my name is Victor Gamov, and as always, have a nice day. Subscribe.
Doesn't have any problem promoting himself, which is good. Yeah, go check out his stuff. Go check out Cong. Victor Gamov, principal developer advocate with Cong.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We got more coming. We have fantastic interviews like Victor coming up next, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Same channel, same bat station. See you in a minute.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by Techstrong Live and powered by Techstrong Group.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Adam Frank, who's VP of Product for Armory. We're going to be talking about continuous delivery as a service. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Forever and a day, we talked about CI and CD as if they're one thing. Everybody pretty much thinks that they are somehow some natural extension of each other. But as of late, we've been talking more about CD as its own distinct category. So what ultimately is going on here? What is the relationship between CI and CD in your mind?
I think people are starting to realize the inefficiencies that they've built onto CI. CI is really about the integration of multiple processes around security scanning and builds and all that kind of good stuff. And they really kind of built a lot of scripts and things necessary to do that delivery, do that deployment piece. But as they start to scale out, as their organization starts to grow, as their teams start to grow, it becomes quite brittle and falls apart. So they really start to understand that my CI might be working well, but I need an actual solution, a point solution, to do the actual delivery, to do the deployment of this, especially when it comes in to needing advanced strategies like blue-green and canary deployments, where you really want to leverage the ability to assure more of your customer's experience and roll out with a lot more control.
A lot of the people I talk to are not doing anything that remotely approaches automation when it comes to CD. Most of it is still manual. And the reason for that is, from their perspective, all the platforms are snowflakes and they're all individually different. So it makes it difficult to automate. Are we getting better at that? Or what's your perception of what's going on here in terms of the maturity curve for CD these days?
Yeah, I certainly think so. And, one of the primary drivers that we had going into creating continuous deployment as a service was we wanted to meet customers where they were. We don't want them to have to migrate. They spent a lot of time, effort, and money into the tooling that they do have. They've set up their code and repos in a certain way. We want to be able to work with everything that they have set up. So we really manage the promotion lifecycle across multiple clusters and environments. And we don't need you to set up your repos and have single branches to one certain environment or anything like that. We want to make sure that we can deploy those multiple Kubernetes manifests together and jointly and decide whether to roll back, just as you want to do as it is today.
And what exactly do we mean by CD as a service these days? Because sometimes people are like, well, it's all integrated and we'll drop it on your platform. Other times they mean it's a cloud platform and I invoke it through some sort of console and API. So what's your definition of as a service these days?
Definitely a cloud platform that we host. We don't want to have to have you upgrade anything or manage everything across different clusters. We want to take care of deploying new features, new functionality, and maintaining at least 3 nines when it comes to uptime. So everything is readily available for you and working just as you expect it to. We want to kind of take that away from the user so they can focus more on building that competitive advantage through their software and what is most meaningful to their business, because CD is something that is necessary and really is the center focal point in our opinion for converging DevOps and having a much better customer experience. But that's not everybody's core competency. Everybody's creating, there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of apps out there that do many, many different things. And that's really their core competency and where they have their competitive advantage.
And this CD platform, is this one you built yourself or you're using open source projects, or how does it work?
Yeah, this is something that we built ourselves. We've worked many years with really the top companies, the top elite development teams across the globe, and we've learned a lot from them. We started out with leveraging Spinnaker as the open source project and really working with a lot of the companies that are leveraging Spinnaker. And we learned that there is definitely a need for companies out there that have a more need a more point solution that's a simpler user experience when it comes to deploying to Kubernetes. So we built this ourselves based on all of the knowledge that we've gained over the years working with a lot of the elite development teams across the globe.
Do you think there's a lot of organizations that might embrace DevOps workflows if they don't have to master all this infrastructure? And in some ways, the infrastructure that we present them with is somewhat intimidating.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's developers and engineers. They really love to tinker. They really love to build. We really love to figure out problems. But when it comes down to it, the problems that we want to solve are really the problems that help our business and again complete that competitive advantage that we have with the software that we are creating. So I think when it comes down to it, and you look at the developer landscape, the amount of tools that are out there, when you start to bring some of those together and try to build all of this yourself, it really does become quite daunting. And the amount of infrastructure that's out there today that we are actually deploying to, again, it becomes really, really daunting when you need to understand everything from top to bottom. So we want our customers, we want the developers of our customers to really focus on the actual coding and less on the deployment. So again, that's why we had this mentality of let's meet them where they were, no migration required, how they have their code set up, how they have their repos set up. We'll meet them right there, and we'll take care of all of the advanced strategies that they need to, so they can roll out with control and just have things work, just have deployments work. I don't know how many times we've talked to developers during interviews and UX interviews and surveys and things like that, and they don't want to necessarily know all of the underlying infrastructure and how everything works. They just want to write their code and they want the deployment to work.
Sometimes when I talk to the cloud native folks, they're like, well, it's only a matter of time before Kubernetes solves this and all other problems. And basically they're saying, you have a standard API now that will run on all these different platforms. But my sense of things is that we're going to have monolithic apps for many, many years to come. So are we going to have to balance microservices and monoliths? And that's why we need some sort of other layer of abstraction?
Yeah, I think so. And when you look at really large organizations, the amount of time that it would take for them to convert all of their monolithic apps to microservices, sometimes it doesn't actually make sense for them. There's not actually the reward with the amount of effort that needs to be put in. So there are very, very valid use cases to maintain some of those monolithic applications. So it's of no surprise. And when we look across history, I mean, we still have large FIs and large organizations leveraging mainframes, and everything in between a mainframe to Kubernetes. And for a lot of valid reasons, all of those technologies still exist and they do still leverage them. So we absolutely need to maintain and have that stance that monolithic applications will exist. And we do need to make deployment and maintenance of those easier as well. But our focus with CD as a service is really around Kubernetes and helping people deploy there.
It seems like, to me at least, the pace at which applications are being built and deployed is increasing dramatically, especially with low code and no code tools. So are we approaching some sort of existential crisis on our ability to keep pace with all those applications that all want to be deployed at the same time?
I don't think so. And again, that's one of the reasons that we created this. We're seeing that exponential line where people are deploying more applications. They need to deploy faster. Their time to market is really, again, comes back to their competitive advantage. Can they get there quicker than their competitors? And we need to enable that. We need them to be able to deploy to multiple environments. We need them to be able to deploy, have multiple deployments, leveraging multiple canary and blue-green strategies that roll out independently and can jointly decide whether they want to proceed or roll back. And fundamentally, that's what we've wrapped inside of CD as a service is the ability to do that across multiple environments, multiple deployments. And again, we meet you where you are, so you have your code set up the way that it is, and we don't require you to change anything there.
Where will security manifest itself in this process around the CD side? Is there some place to inject some sort of review, or what's your sense of DevSecOps and CD meet where?
Absolutely, no question. Security is in our opinion, one of those kind of three main pillars that everybody is as the top of mind and is trying to achieve. So there is absolutely hooks into security scanners. We can have manual approvals. We can have automated approvals. Those are always going to exist. We want to make sure that the security scanners and any security processes that are present today, again, can be automated and help move things along quickly and continue with that deployment frequency, increasing that deployment frequency and getting those applications to market as fast as possible, but as secure as possible and with the best user experience that our customers can.
Ultimately, do you care what the CI platform is that people are using? I mean, can we separate these decisions where the CI is driven by the development team and the ops folks are more focused on the CD? Is that how it's going to kind of be loosely coupled, but somewhat separate?
Yeah, I mean, we don't care what CI platform, what CI tool is being used. that comes back to meeting you where you were and the time and effort that you've put into your tooling. We completely understand that. So we don't want you to have a need to change any of that. But I think one of the big things that we're seeing is with really small companies that are starting out, you typically have one of the developers within your team that really starts to take control of the entire CI and CD process. That has seemed to morph into a platform engineering team that kind of manages that and provides a service out to the development teams that they work directly with. So that's kind of a big trend that we've seen across a lot of our customers, is that platform engineering team that takes care of the end-to-end CI/CD, along with a lot of the site reliability needs, the monitoring, the observability, and things like that as well, making sure that that is there for their development developer customers. But so I don't necessarily think that CI is separated out from CD between different teams, but we certainly need to make the CD aspects easier, and we believe that we've absolutely done that.
Right. We hear a lot about AI just about everywhere you turn these days. So
yeah, we do.
You think AI will be applied to CD someday? And if so, what might it look like?
I think there's definitely aspects of AI under the AI umbrella where we can leverage statistical analysis, we can leverage machine learning to help automate some of these processes. Again, we want to make sure that the process is moving along as fast as possible, but making sure that the applications are available. They maintain that availability, so they have that controlled deployment out to a percentage of the environment. So there's areas that can start to baseline and monitor what certain metrics look like, and those metrics are going to mean something different for you as they are to me, depending on the application that we are working on, as an example. So our customers know the metrics that they track, so they can maintain that good customer experience, trying to get ahead of it, have that proactive approach. And if they are rolling out to 5%, 10, 20, and things start to deviate from that baseline, then maybe they can start to implement automated rollbacks. And, we absolutely give that ability. So there's definitely places that can, AI and things, strategies under the AI umbrella that can take advantage of things like that. So I think there's lots of room to continue to automate the deployment process using certain AI techniques, for sure.
What's the one thing you wish people knew about CD or appreciated about CD before they get started? As you look at a lot of new customers, they come in, and what's that one thing that you go, wow, if you guys would just do this, you'd be further down the path?
That's a great question. I think it's really about educating people that CD and CI are different things, and you don't need to just bolt and build something on the CI process that you have. There are things out there that Armory provides. There's CD as a service is a main example that will significantly help you with your deployment, and that's really the big thing that we need to educate people on, is that CI and CD are different. And in our opinion, CD has been talked about as that last mile technology to really help people automate their end-to-end process and get it out there. But it's really the beginning for us, because it's at the center, it's the core of making sure that things are stable. Customers have the agility that they need to move, and security is wrapped up in there. And those three things right there, in our opinion, have all the things needed to make a really, really great customer experience for our customers that are delivering their software to their customers.
Great. Hey, Adam, thanks for being on the show.
Really appreciate it, Mike. Have a great day.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Keith Nielsen, who's technology evangelist for CloudSphere, and we're talking about the role HR plays in cybersecurity. Keith, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
There was a perception that HR folks probably don't have a lot to do with cybersecurity, and maybe that they're very focused on, say, compliance issues. But do they have a role in cybersecurity, and where does that manifest itself?
I think they absolutely do. I think really what we see and what needs to be in place is a sort of synergetic business process that's in alignment with HR as a department, as a function of the business, along with IT departments. And that's really to ensure that, we've got smooth transitive processes from onboarding of new employees with the assets that they need to use for their day job and their role, with access to systems that they need to use to function to deliver that role that they've undertaken. But equally, and arguably from a security perspective, potentially more importantly, is the offboarding process. So I think human resources as a department absolutely does have a critical piece to play in that role.
And that offboarding gets overlooked. I'm pretty sure I have access to at least 3 or 4 systems that companies that I probably worked for in the last 10 years that are still there. What makes offboarding so tough for organizations?
I think what makes it so tough is the lack of visibility, first and foremost, over what assets and what data, what systems, potentially even devices, an employee or even a consultant, which is a slightly different challenge actually has access to. And, of course, throughout our employment life cycle, our devices change, access changes. We perhaps inherit access through groups, in terms of our user management, all of which has this dynamic nature in terms of what we have access to and the level of access that we were actually granted. And so I think that visibility is a key issue, because when it comes to offboarding, it's about not only having a really comprehensive and considered strategy and process to actually offboard properly and check everything, but that's only as good as the visibility that you have technically to ensure that we've got a handle on what exactly they did have access to, so that we can, go ahead and efficiently remove that when needed. So I think it's a number of things. It's the visibility, it's the mechanism to actually, carry out that offboarding, and then it's the process that those 2 departments that we've already talked to actually have, making sure that's cohesive and aligned, and actually a living thing, because our businesses process, the processes change all the time. Like I said, the devices and the technologies that we're using change all the time. So those things have to all be cohesive together.
And the longer that person is working before they leave, the more systems they have access to, because they've probably been promoted across multiple departments over the years, and they kept access to all those things that they already have. So short of offboarding, should I also be more aggressive about who has access to what systems when, even while they're working? Because you do see people getting their credentials stolen, and maybe people have access to too many things as it is.
Indeed. And this is, kind of getting to the point of cyber asset management, because fundamentally what that does is it combines discovery and visibility with governance and policy. And that's really about having awareness and an inventory of what systems we actually all have within the business. And it will look at assets such as our identity management, the data that we're using, the devices that we're using, the applications that we have access to. All of that combined with context fundamentally allows us to get a grip of what exactly we have in our estate, what's the posture of that, of those individual assets, and what's the level of compliance and governance on those, what's their configuration. All of these are must-have questions that security teams in particular need to have the answers to. And fundamentally, as I say, that's what cyber asset management is actually all about. And one of the use cases, of course, that we've talked to is obviously leveraged toward offboarding and onboarding, but absolutely, it's also whilst someone's actually in place within a corporation.
A lot of security people tend to look down their nose at compliance issues because they're like, well, compliance is the bare minimum, and we need to be a lot more secure than your fundamental compliance, whether it's HIPAA or whatever it might be. But does that kind of put us at odds with one another, and maybe we need to figure out how compliance and cybersecurity needs to be a little more joined at the hip?
Well, I think, that's another thing that cyber asset management does in particular. What it does is it provides predefined compliance templates. So you mentioned a couple before, SOC, HIPAA as an example, PCI DSS. These are, predefined, pre-governed compliance frameworks that products within the cyber asset management domain allow you to drop onto your existing assets. So, very rapidly and quickly, we can ensure that we're compliant. In addition, of course, we have corporate governance and corporate security that often, will leverage those frameworks as guidance, and they'll have their own bespoke interpretations, and most of which go above and beyond those frameworks that we've mentioned. And that's, of course, what it would also allow. So it combines that governance and compliance and security in one place, combined with, that entire dynamic visibility of the whole environment. And it really just ensures that we're compliant, not just from that framework perspective that you talked to, but generally from a corporate perspective, the security policies that we must have as a business that we define internally.
Are we too isolated in our approach? Do we need to converge roles? Because it sounds like the technology is enabling some level of convergence. So do we really need to maybe rethink how we're organized to manage the whole process?
Well, I mean, Mike, the reality is, Mike, that we're seeing that, right? We're seeing modernization take place in a number of different domains. And modernization isn't just a technology-focused effort. In order for modernization to be successful, it actually should comprise of, processes too. And often that requires a cultural change. We've seen that in DevOps, which is all about, the delivery of our services and our applications combined with technology and architecture. And of course, what we've also seen is this sort of DevSecOps strand away from that, which is all about incorporating security at that earlier stage. So I really believe that we're already seeing that trend, and dare I suggest we'd see more of that, and perhaps some different angles take place. But that's all about making sure that as technology moves forward, as the threats evolve, as new cloud services in particular are generated and evolve, that opens up the space for misconfiguration greater again. So it's being able to make sure that we keep up with those changes. And I think that those team changes that we've talked to have absolutely taken place and will continue to do so.
I think it's fair to say that maybe we're a little sloppy when it comes to managing all this stuff, and we hear a lot about AI these days. So do you think that the machines maybe someday will save us from ourselves?
Possibly. I know that clearly, I think when we look at the market around cyber asset management, the next logical step in terms of efficiency would be to introduce, levels of automation. I think right now we're at that stage where it's all about data gathering and interpretation of that data. That really does help us, and it supports all those use cases we've talked to, such as misconfiguration and awareness, and things like prioritization in terms of threats. But clearly, to optimize that and refine that even further, as you put, to kind of prevent human error even more, then clearly the use of automation would help. And the reality is that some of these environments now are incredibly large and they're so dynamic. It is getting to the point where it's challenging to maintain a grip just through scale and the fact that a lot of the services are so dynamic. So yeah, I fully expect, levels of automation to start coming in, and, let's hope that they're a lot more reliable than we are.
When you start thinking about all this, I talk to the security people all the time, and we hear a lot about more sophisticated threats all the time. But when you ask them about it, they'll tell you that most of the attacks are not really increasing in sophistication, because the issue is that the attack surface is just too broad, and they can't deal with all of it. And the bad guys are like, why would I go to all that extra effort when all these simple little attacks just work just fine? Mm-hmm. So has that become the core problem, is just that we can't defend the attack surface as it is?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I would say that one of the things that we've seen, in light of the recent pandemic, is we have seen a flurry of activity take place. Obviously, the world's in a bit of a funny place with some of the stuff that's going on. We have seen an influx of cyber activity. I think, in general, yes, I would agree. I do think that there have been some attacks that have lent on the fact that some organizations, most organizations, are now a little bit more dispersed geographically than they were before. We've certainly seen some end user type attacks that are specifically targeting the fact that we're at home. I don't think they're necessarily any smarter, but they just changed tack in terms of how they're going about attacking. But generally, yeah, the issue is the fact that the attack surface is just so big and broad and varied. As we mature our technology stacks, and we're starting to leverage, IoT devices, for an instance, we're seeing different attack surfaces emerge that we perhaps didn't have before. So trying to maintain a grip of these estates, where they reside, what we have, versions of what we have, all the different firmware and software versions, it's an absolute minefield. And that's why we're seeing our market emerge. Cyber asset management is an emerging market for that very reason, because the challenge of trying to maintain that visibility, let alone control, it certainly needs help. And that's, hence us being here. This is really, primarily what we're focused on.
So what's your best advice to folks? I mean, does the cybersecurity team need to pay HR a visit, or do I throw everybody in a room and lock the door and hope something good happens? How do we approach this?
I think it's a couple of things. I think the first things first is I would ensure that there's unison between the HR department and the IT department, security department. That's really to ensure that from a business process perspective, there's alignment in terms of the end-to-end process. I think the next step would be, and some of this isn't necessarily technology driven. It's just, plain common sense, but it's incredible how often, over time, some of these processes stray away from where they're needed to be. It's ensuring that you've got like a checklist, of allowing HR and IT cohesively to work through to ensure that offboarding is actually successfully delivered, and then combine that with the help of technology such as cyber asset management to give you that visibility and governance in terms of policy. I think it's the only real way to ensure that you've got a scalable, automated, and governed process to offboard employees. Now, obviously, we see many different types of threats when an employee leaves. The obvious, malicious activities that sometimes take place, like stealing sensitive records, or intellectual property, or deletion of files. You mentioned at the start about just accidentally having access to systems. Yeah, I've personally been in that position too. I'm sure a lot of us have. But it's not just the malicious activity. I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and something to add on to that checklist, is considering the regulation and compliance of the company itself. They have a duty and a responsibility to protect the data that they keep about past employees. It's not just malicious activity. It's also making sure that any data that's left behind is stored correctly and handled properly, just as it would do through the terms of employment. So there's a lot of things to consider. A good strategy and a plan, I think, is first and foremost, and that strategy should incorporate the technology to make that easier.
All right. Well, I think there's a lot of cybersecurity people that would rather go visit the dentist than actually go to the HR department. So I think there's going to be a lot of pizza involved. Start handing out pizza, people will show up for meetings, and then maybe some good things will happen, and we'll see what happens from there.
Normally, for sure. Yeah.
Keith, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Mike. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Back to you guys in the studio.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. Our awesome host brought us interviews from around the world, from Mitch at KubeCon Cloud NativeCon to Alan and Charlene at RSA. Mike Verzard also had some very insightful interviews with our guests from Armory and CloudSphere. We'll be back again on Monday, so please join us for that. Once again, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again. Stay strong, Tech Strong.